There is a version of your life where you started, not when things were stable, not when you had more room in the budget, not after the raise, not after the move, not after whatever it is you are waiting for. A version of your life where, on an ordinary Tuesday, when you had $200 left after rent and your account looked the way your account always looks, you started anyway. This is that version. You're sitting on the floor of a studio apartment that still smells like the previous tenant's cooking, and you are looking at a financial account you set up 6 weeks ago and then forgot about. The app is called something boring. The interface is not exciting. There is a button that says Set up automatic investment and a field that asks how much. You type 75. Not because you did the math, not because you read a book, because a number had to go in the field and 75 felt small enough that losing it each month might not hurt, and large enough that maybe, just maybe, it would eventually add up to something. You set it to the first of the month. You close the app. You do not feel anything in particular. That is exactly how it starts. You do not feel it because nothing about that Tuesday changes. The rent is still the same. The group chat is still full of people asking who's going out Friday. Your coworker is still talking about starting to invest when he gets his finances sorted out, which he has been saying for 8 months. Your bank account is still the exact number it was, minus 75. What you do not know yet, what this version of your life has not yet shown you, is that you just made the most financially significant decision of the next 2 decades. You made it in 30 seconds. You made it without understanding it. Your balance is $937. You know this because you checked it this morning, which you do sometimes. Not obsessively, not every day, just occasionally the way you might glance at a plant you are not sure is still alive. It is alive. It is not impressive. $937 is not a number that makes you feel wealthy. It barely feels real. But here is what has changed. Sunday nights are different, not fixed, not healed. Still the low-grade anxiety of a weak beginning. Still the mental scroll through everything you have not done. Still the vague sense that you are behind in some way you cannot name. But there is one thing that is not on the list anymore. One thing that has moved out of the pile of things to be anxious about and into the pile of things that are quietly being handled. You didn't plan for that shift. Nobody told you it would happen. You tell one person about the investment account, a friend from college who is careful with money in a way you have always found slightly annoying. She asks how much you have. You tell her. She nods like this is a reasonable thing and not remarkable. You find for the first time that you do not want to be in the category of people who haven't started yet. You already aren't. That is the identity shift. That is the self-image thing nobody puts in the financial advice. You are now a person who does this. You have been for 12 months. $3,214. You pull up the app on a Wednesday night, sitting in a different apartment, bigger, in a neighborhood you couldn't have afforded before the raise, and the number doesn't look fake anymore. $3,000 is a buffer, not a life-changing sum, not financial freedom. But $3,000 means that if your car breaks down, you don't have to choose between fixing it and making rent. You don't have to call anyone. You don't have to go quiet on the group chat because you're embarrassed. You just fix the car. Most of your friends have not started yet. You know this because the topic comes up occasionally, the way it does in your mid-20s when someone has a panic about money and the conversation turns briefly serious before going back to where you're eating. They talk about starting when things stabilize, when they figure out what app to use, when they understand it better. You used to say the same things, and then the first reveal. Because here is what you did not know when you set that automation up at 22. You didn't know that the people who start when things are stable almost never start. Not because they are lazy or irresponsible, because things never stabilize. There is always a reason, there is always something that the money needs to do first before it gets to work for you. And so it never gets to work for you. The version of you who waited for stable, that version exists. You can see that version from here. They are not in a worse apartment or a worse job. They look almost exactly like you. The gap at year 3 is $3,000 in the identity of someone who has already begun. That is all it is, for now. $7,840. You are checking the app at a restaurant, which you know is a slightly embarrassing thing to do, and you stop because you see a number that doesn't make sense. The math is off. You do the calculation, you put in about $4,500 over 5 years. The account has $7,800 in it. The extra $3,000 came from somewhere you didn't put it. You sit with that for a moment. The food arrives, you put the phone down. That is the moment. That is the one that matters. Not a turning point, not a floor moment, not a crisis. Just a quiet Tuesday at a restaurant where the number you see is larger than the number you put in, and you realize that the machine has started working on its own, that there is a part of this equation that does not require your effort anymore. It runs while you eat. It runs while you sleep. It ran while you were not paying attention to it for 6 weeks in year 2. The slow drip has been filling the container. You have not seen the overflow yet, but you have just seen the water level rising. What changes at year 5 is not your lifestyle. You are not making dramatically different choices. You are eating at roughly the same restaurants, wearing roughly the same clothes, living in a life that looks almost identical from the outside. What changes is the feeling you have about financial decisions. You have started asking a different question. Not, can I afford this? You still ask that. But alongside it, quietly, another question has started appearing. Does this fit the plan? You didn't decide to be that person, you became them. Over 5 years, without noticing, that number from the beginning, $75, it matters again now, but not for the reason you thought. When you set that number at 22, you chose it because it felt small enough to survive losing. That was the whole logic. It was a number you picked because it didn't frighten you. What you didn't understand then is that the number wasn't really the point. The point was the automation. The point was removing the decision, because the enemy of building wealth in your 20s is not laziness or ignorance. It is the 112 other decisions that drain your financial energy every month, leaving nothing for the one that matters most. The automation meant you never had to be motivated. You never had to remember. You never had to have a good month. It just left on the 1st every month while you were doing other things. $75 was never going to make you wealthy. The habit of removing the decision, that was what was going to make you wealthy. And you built that habit without knowing it on a Tuesday in a studio apartment by typing a number into a field. $28,400. Say that again. $28,400. You have increased your contribution twice. Once when you got the better job, once 2 years after that when the raise came through. The automatic investment now takes $160 a month. You honestly forget about it most of the time. The account does what the account does, but $28,000 is a different number than $3,000. It is a different number than $7,000. $28,000 is a number with weight. The version of you who did not start at 22, the stable version, the waiting version, that version exists in the same city, the same industry, approximately the same salary. You might see them at a birthday dinner. They look the same as you, they talk the same. But the conversation about money, when it comes up, sounds different. They are still waiting. They have the same intention they had in year one. Life kept intervening. There was always something. The gap between you is now $28,000 and 10 years of the habit that generates it. That gap has a name now. That gap is real. And here's the reveal you are not ready for at 22. It's not about the 28,000. The 28,000 is just the number. What matters is what the 28,000 means, which is that you now have 10 years of evidence that the machine works, 10 years of watching the number move when you didn't touch it, 10 years of being a person who can point at a consequence of their past decision and say, I made that. That exists because of something I did. That evidence changes how you see yourself financially, and that, not the number, is the thing that compounds most powerfully. $134,000. You are not retired. This is not the end of a story where you walk away from work at 42 and live on an island. That is not what this video promised. This is not that video. What this is options. $134,000 does not make every problem go away. The mortgage still exists. The kids' tuition is a real concern. There are still months where money is tighter than you want it to be. The anxiety that has always lived somewhere low in your chest. It did not disappear when the account crossed 6 figures. It never does. But here is what $134,000 actually does. It changes which decisions feel like choices and which decisions feel like defaults. At 22, when the car broke down, you had no choice. You charged it. At 32, you had a cushion. At 42, you have a fund specifically for this, and it doesn't even affect your investment balance. The car breaks down and you feel mildly annoyed, which is the appropriate emotional response to a car breaking down. Not panicked, not ashamed, mildly annoyed. That is the difference. The phone in your hand, the same app, the boring interface, the field where you once typed 75, shows a number that took 20 years to build. You remember vaguely what it felt like the first time you checked it. $937. The embarrassed pride of a balance too small to impress anyone. The quiet sense that at least you had started. You still have the same sense. It just has a different number attached to it now. The slow drip ran for 20 years. The container is full. And for the first time, you can actually see the overflow, not as a fantasy, not as a projection, but as a number on a screen that is larger than the number you put in by a margin that stops feeling abstract when you look at it long enough. This is the thing the container was always going to do. You just had to let it run. There is one question that the version of you who didn't start at 22 will ask themselves, will keep asking themselves for years. Not, why didn't I invest more? Not, why didn't I find a better app? Not any of the tactical questions. The question is this: what was I waiting for? And the difficult, honest answer, the one that takes a long time to say out loud, is that there was no good reason. There was inertia. There was the sense that starting required understanding, and understanding required time. And time was always something they would have more of later. There was the feeling that the amount they could put in was too small to matter. There was the low-grade belief that building wealth was something other people did. People with more, people with different starting points, people who had been taught. None of those things were true. They were just thoughts that lived in the space where a decision should have been. The question this version of your life leaves you with is not what you would do differently. You already know what you would do differently. The question is what you are going to do now, with the information you have today, at the age you are today, with whatever number you can type into a field without it frightening you. 75, 50, 25. The number is not the point. The point is the first of the month. The point is the automation. The point is removing the decision so that it happens whether you are motivated or not, whether you remember or not, whether this month was good or not. The question nobody can answer for you, the one this video ends inside of, is simply this: what are you waiting for? Subscribe. The next story is already waiting.